Okay, we're going to get going. Hopefully, I don't mess things up. And here we go. Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop In CEO, and I want to thank you for dropping in again on the podcast where week after week I get to speak to amazing leaders who share their insights with you and hopefully inspire you. And if you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and most importantly, tell others. Because when we share these great resources with others, we elevate the collective. And just know we do this podcast because I sincerely care about the C suite leaders of today and tomorrow to navigate their challenges and opportunities with confidence. And so today I am so grateful to know my amazing guest, Peter Begg, who is currently Chief Quality and Food Safety Officer for Lyons Magnus, where he oversees all aspects of quality and food safety across the company, including risk management, regulatory, and food safety conformity and product compliance for the business. Lyons Magnus offers ingredient solutions across the food industry to numerous food service and consumer product companies. And most of all, throughout his 29-year career, Peter has worked in a variety of roles from engineering, R&D, and quality, where he also represented Mondelez International on the Global Food Safety Initiative Board of Directors from 2012 to 2017. I'm so honored to finally get him onto the show. Peter, welcome to the show, and thank you for dropping in.
All right, thanks, Deb. Really happy to be here and get to see you again.
Yeah, it's interesting how Peter and I met. And again, for my listeners, we were put together by a quick shout out to Rick Byros, who sponsors the Food Safety Consortium, where I had the distinct opportunity through a panel discussion to interview him as well as a panel of other food safety professionals. So that's how we started this relationship. But I wanted to continue the conversation because, quite frankly, the area of quality regulatory is cool. I have to say it. It's not just a compliance organization. The role that we serve in quality and food safety is so incredibly important to assure the supply chain for end users and consumers. So, Peter, I didn't want to read all of your bio because you have to tell your own backstory, but share a little bit
Sure.
about yourself with my audience and how you arrived at where you're at now.
No, I'd be happy to. So about myself, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I'm from Pittsburgh. So I went to school in Pittsburgh. I'm a Yinzer. If anyone is from Pittsburgh, that's the slang term because of the accent that Pittsburgh people have. So I'm a diehard Pittsburgh Steeler fan for any football fans out there. Um, I went to high school at Pittsburgh Central Catholic, which is the alma mater of Dan Marino or Mark Bulger. So we're a well-known football high school in Western Pennsylvania. And then I went to Penn State and studied chemical engineering. I had a strong interest in. I loved chemistry, but more than anything, math was my strong suit. So I decided to go into chemical engineering. And throughout the time I was at Penn State, I had a lot of great experiences. I actually became president of the Engineering Student Council, which exposed me to some pretty fantastic leaders who were on their alumni board. So I got to meet some pretty neat individuals along the way. And what that helped me understand is I didn't want to necessarily go into the oil and gas industry. Nothing against that. The thought of being on a platform in the Gulf of Mexico wasn't really my cup of tea. So I really focused on consumer products, pharmaceuticals, that sort of area, and ended up working for Kraft Foods. I did an internship with them before my senior year, really enjoyed it, and so decided to go into the food industry and started out in engineering, doing your typical project management, working with the various different, contractors, mechanical engineers, et cetera, putting in equipment and processes. Did that for a number of years and then moved into more of a pure R&D role where we were doing product development and got to invent, sort of what was the next great thing. Got to work on some cool products, some of which didn't see the marketplace, but others are still in the marketplace. So at one point, just about 2001, my team worked on cottage doubles, which is cottage cheese with the fruit prep in the little container. It's a breakstone and has cottage doubles. And it's still out in the marketplace. And what's interesting to come full circle is Lyons provides the fruit that goes into that product. So I had heard of Lyons 20 plus years ago. Didn't really know them as a company, but it's just funny how life sometimes comes full circle. So I did product development in a variety of capacities for a few years. I began to move my way up in terms of management of larger teams. And then in 2005, I became the director of R&D and quality because the way Kraft was structured, R&D and quality were together. Every company's different. I've seen quality and food safety report into supply chain. I've seen it report into legal, which I have my opinions on that. I think it's tough when it reports to legal. And now in my current role, I report to the CEO, which I think says a lot about Lyons and about the importance of quality and food safety, which we can talk about later. Um, but that was the first time where I had direct responsibility. So I had the quality leader for our food service business, and Kraft's food service business basically, supplied restaurants, hotels, your service, your food service providers like Sodexo, Gordon Food Service, Cisco, et cetera. So anything in the portfolio, we would sell in bulk. So we did, Oreos for Dairy Queen, like the Oreo, you grind up Oreos and you put them in your Blizzard. We did all the Outback bloomin' onion sauce was Kraft mayonnaise. You'd have A1 sauce on the restaurant table. So a lot of really, and that was my first exposure to food service. And what was really neat about that was getting to meet all of the different culinary people who bring the concepts to life. So going down to Outback and going to Sonic and some of these other players, and it's pretty fascinating how they develop the concepts that end up being advertised on TV and that we go and purchase when we go into restaurants. So I really that was one of my favorite jobs. I did that for 3 years and then was approached about an opportunity to do an international assignment, which I had expressed an interest in. So I went and made the move full time into quality. This is 2008. And so I've been in the space since then. And I moved to Europe and I was the director of quality for Kraft for Europe. So I lived in Zurich, Switzerland. My kids were young. They were 2 and 4. So then my daughter remembers some of it, but it was personally, professionally, it was just a fantastic experience. And we, Zurich's a beautiful town, very expensive, but a beautiful town. And having responsibility for people across the entire EU, it was a great learning experience. And if you think about from a communication standpoint, I tell people one of the biggest learnings for me was when English isn't your first language, which was the majority of my team, you have to speak slower because we speak fast as Americans, many of us, and you can't speak with slang because there's so many terms we use that a European looks at you like I'm trying to translate into French or Spanish, and you're telling me a word that doesn't translate. And so that was a big learning for me. But on the flip side, the one other thing I'll just throw in from a leadership standpoint, I also learned that there's a common thread no matter what culture you are in, especially in sort of a corporate environment. People want to be recognized, they want to be developed, and they want to be treated with respect. That is a common thread no matter where you're working in the US or you're working in Europe or Australia or India, wherever. So, I know we talk about cultural differences, but there's some definite common threads around leadership. So I did that assignment, had a fantastic time. And then after 3 years, my wife was ready to come back. It's tough. I mean, when you take your whole family over, it's not easy being away from family. And so we came back after 3 years of the assignment, and literally soon after I came back to the U.S., Kraft announced we were splitting into 2 companies, Kraft Foods and Mondelez International. And so I actually got the opportunity to help work on the split with a colleague of mine and really help design the organization from, what was it going to look like. The woman who was the VP of quality in the same time frame had left the company, and so there was a bit of a leadership vacuum. So the person who was the head of North America and myself, we worked together. And so I was asked when that all was done to move to the Mondelez side. And that's when, as you mentioned, I joined the GFSI board of directors for the company, and I ran our central quality team that really looked after anything that cut across our 5 business units. So things like auditing, supplier quality, sanitation, crisis management. So I was the global crisis management coordinator. So just a lot of very broad responsibilities across the globe. And Mondelez at the time had 5 business units. We had 150 odd facilities, our own facilities, plus 300 contract manufacturers. So it was quite a big scope that my team looked after from a sort of an auditing and supplier quality. So that was a great experience. And then in 2017, I was presented with an opportunity to do something different. And so I made the move to Glanbia Nutritionals to be their vice president of quality and food safety. And Glanbia is an ingredient manufacturer. They do dairy. Dairy is what they were known for. That's what the company was founded on 100 years ago in Ireland, was a dairy co-op. And then they eventually expanded to the US in the 80s and have grown since then in the US. And in fact, they own the largest dairy in the United States. Well, they co-own it. It's a joint venture with Dairy Farmers of America. And if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever been to a dairy, but this dairy in Clovis, New Mexico, it's in eastern New Mexico, would just blows people out of the water if you've ever been there. Not only is it massive, but it's one of the most beautiful plants I've ever been in. And they have 100,000 cows that supply them. They process 15 million pounds of milk a week. And for those in the dairy industry, they know how much that is. It's a lot of milk.
Wow.
It's a lot of milk in a week. And so, I mean, you just see constant trucks coming in there. So I loved Glanbia. Glanbia is a really good company. You always leave for different reasons. And I didn't leave Glanbia because I was unhappy. I actually had an opportunity. A former Kraft colleague of mine was the CEO of Hearthside Foods, which is one of the largest contract manufacturers in the US. And he asked me if I would join them to be their head of quality and food safety. And so I did, and joined them, and eventually added R&D as well as health and safety to my responsibilities as I was there. So I know a little bit about health and safety as well as part of my. It's not even on my resume, but I've had that responsibility. And Hearthside was a solid company, but contract manufacturing is tough. It's tough because, especially when you're working with a lot of the large CPG companies, they're going to prioritize their internal plants before they prioritize their contract manufacturer. And if you look at the industry right now, volumes are down while revenues are up. It's all through pricing. If you look at their volume mix, a lot of the companies, their volumes are down. Now, not huge, but they're down, a couple percentage points. Well, that overflow typically would go to the contract manufacturer, but it's going to be kept in house. And so that really hurts contract manufacturing if you're in that industry. But I was again approached by a recruiter about this opportunity at Lyons, and it was a chance to get back into ingredients and food service, which I really had. I told you one of my favorite jobs was the food service one at Kraft, and I had a phenomenal leader. The president of the division was, still to this day, I still talk to him. He's a mentor, and he was just an excellent leader. And so I made the move to Lyons. I've been there 5 months, and really enjoying it. It's got a great culture. It's a company that was founded by an individual in 1971, and he built the company from 5 million to about $1 billion in sales this year. And he sold it in 19 to private equity because he was, getting advanced in age. But his culture still it's so powerful throughout the
Mm.
organization, and it really is a people first culture, which is rare in this day and age. It is rare. So that's what brought me today. Sorry if I went a little too long. It was probably what 10 minutes, but that's what brought me to talk to you today.
No, no worries about that because again, this is about you and I building a bit of a relationship and some rapport, and my listeners get to learn about my new guest, Peter Begg. But there is just so much in that. I mean, I don't know where to start, but one of the things that I think was a mic drop moment for me was when you talked about your aha moment while in Europe, while they are different culturally, about the common thread of being recognized, being developed, and also being respected. I really, really, really like that. And I think that, like you say, is what brings all humanity together wherever we may
Absolutely.
happen to be, despite the different cultures, politics, etc. Just on a quick note, Zurich, Switzerland, near and dear. Again, I had the opportunity with Givaudan to visit Switzerland, but
Mhm.
my son Daniel and his wife Camille are there in Zurich, Switzerland,
Oh, wow.
working with two cats, living the wonderful life of being able to travel and see so many different things. We do hope they come back someday to the U.S., but a beautiful city, beautiful culture, and can't
Absolutely.
wait to go back there.
Yeah.
But one of the things, well, first of all, kudos to you for being pulled into so many opportunities. That's one of the things I find is a challenge for some up and coming leaders is that while they sometimes seek new opportunities and they interview for jobs within a company, external to the company. They get to that final interview, they bang their head because they don't get that opportunity. It's like, pushing up against a brick wall. I'm
Yeah.
just curious if we think about some advice for those people that might be struggling to get to that next level or that lateral or what have you. What has worked for you? Because I want my audience to struggle less. And you seem to have always been pulled in a direction to where you can serve. And I just want you to
Yeah.
share your thoughts about that or advice you can share with others. And then I got about five other questions
Yeah.
to
No,
go.
it's a great question. And I think, as leaders, and it doesn't matter what function you're leading, you have to have, I'll call it, what do you stand for? What is it that differentiates you from others? And for me, I boil it down to three things. It's about people, it's about culture, and it's about programs. And in fact, that's how we've started to develop our strategy at Lyons around quality and food safety, because it starts with the people. If you don't have the right people in the right roles, you can have the best programs in the world. You still need people to execute them. Hopefully we're not to the point where AI is taking over everything and we have robots, but you still need people to execute. And then the culture piece, and we talked a little bit about food safety culture earlier. Um, you have to build the right culture that the people in your organization understand the why behind what you do, and that when you're making food, especially, people can die. I mean, it is, and I don't mean to sound morbid, but if you don't make the right decisions every day, it can have a serious impact on society. And so, building that culture, helping people understand the why, and then finally, it has to be underpinned with strong programs. And the programs is the easiest to kind of get your fingers around because it's like, oh, let's write SOPs and policies and all that. But if you don't have the people in the culture, I don't think you'll be successful. And so that's kind of been and I've learned that. I mean, that didn't come to me like overnight. I would say even leaving Mondelez, I wasn't quite as probably eloquent with sort of like what was I about? What did I stand for? And that's just evolved probably in the last 6-7 years. And so, yeah, I've been fortunate. My last two assignments I've been pulled to, and
Yeah,
it's been great.
what I really love about that piece of advice is what you stand for. And it's interesting. I did not get that piece of advice or what was said to me was presence
Yeah.
until I was mid in my last role as the head of quality. I had a confidant or somebody I went to in the HR space, and I said, hey, I'm dotting my I's, crossing my T's. I got my data right. My data's moving in the right direction. I said, but sometimes there's just crickets in the room where I'm not getting the impact that I'm looking for. And they said, well, you need presence. I said, okay, what does that mean? A nice suit, a good haircut, what have
Yeah.
you. And they says, no, you need to be able to know what you stand for, that each time you show up at an opportunity, a meeting, you have the same talking points that ties everything what you say together. So when people refer to you, that's the person that talks about X, Y, and Z. It is critical because that's
Absolutely.
where you start projecting your voice, you start standing out. So when you do show up for that job interview and you talk about what you stand for versus simply the tactical accomplishments, it does set you apart.
100%. And I'm an extrovert. If you know Myers-Briggs, I'm an ESTJ. So I mean, talking maybe sometimes a little too much comes easy, but it has to be backed by something. Just being full of hot air isn't going to be make you successful either. Because I've interviewed people that interview very well, and then when you peel back the layers, maybe it's not as stable behind that facade.
So I want to go into food safety culture because again, I work with a lot of companies where I see the people in the rank and file are struggling because sometimes people are faced with tough decisions between the three or four pillars of quality and service and costs and what have you. And sometimes the environment puts people in a position of having to make difficult choices. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts where you see maybe the food safety culture is where where it not should be, and
Yeah.
how to evolve this? I know you touched on the why, but I really maybe want to get a little bit more practical because there's so many people out there that are struggling to influence up, sideways, and down. What are your thoughts around this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it starts with the leadership. My boss, our CEO, absolutely talks people safety and then food safety, and he's consistent. It's not just for the media. We could talk about the example you brought up earlier. He's not just pontificating to have sound bites. It's a true belief, and that belief is backed up by one, the fact that I report to him, but two, that I have his full support to implement the programs, the resources that's necessary to make us successful in quality and food safety. So one, culture, if you don't have the leadership support, again, it's not going to
Uphill
be
battle.
successful.
It's an uphill
And
battle.
it is an uphill battle. But I will tell you, people tend to get religion real fast when there's a major issue.
Tell me
And I've
about it.
seen it. I mean,
Tell me
you
about it.
can look at Jack in the Box, you can look at Chipotle. Those are great companies now, but they had their serious moment where they got hit right in the face with a food safety issue, and it really causes you to take a step back and really assess what do you stand for as a company, what's going to be your priority. And I'm a huge believer in that if you put people safety and food safety first, you will make money. And I've seen it time and time again, because if people know they're cared for, like, we want you to go home with all your arms and limbs and fingers and toes. And secondly, and this gets the food safety piece, that the food you're eating, your families are eating, your kids are eating these foods. Don't you want them to eat it, that it's safe and high quality? And that's sort of the angle I always try and come with it at around food safety. So we're implementing some activities. So we've started a lot of culture activities, and I've I had some success at Glambia with this. And it's really, how do you engage the employees and personalize it for them? Because it's sort of like, what does it mean to me? Oh, that's great. You want me to check the metal detector. You want me to check the temperature. But it's, what does it mean to me is, well, my family is going to be safe when they eat this product. So I've done things in the past where we've put pictures of kids, families and their kids in the hallway leading to the plant to remind them, hey, we want you to go home safe, we want you to
Mm.
make safe food. This month we're actually doing a food safety culture event, where we're going to engage kids, and we're going to do a coloring contest, and we've got a couple of black and white pictures we're going to pass out and ask employees, have your kids color this. And not because we're doing a coloring contest, but just to engage them on food safety and quality. And there are a couple of like cartoonish, like microorganisms and things like that, but we're going to post them in the break room, and every kid will get a small
Yeah.
treat because it's Easter time. But again, it's another way to really engage with the employees and the workforce, about the importance of this and what does it mean for them. Because if you can't again, I use the word you win their hearts and minds. If you can't make them understand, like, what does it mean for me? Then it's just pushing a button or filling out a piece of paper, and you're not going to build the culture.
So you are in an optimal situation. Kudos for having the leadership that enables you to carry out and evolve the food safety culture. I've had the challenge of what thought was a good, positive food safety culture, but I did face a potential food safety issue for which we did have to voluntarily pull stuff back. And I will tell you, nobody told me don't do it. However, there was immense pressure due to business challenges and relationship issues and supply chain issues and financial issues. And then I also had the advice of legal counsel. At the end of the day, I can sleep at night. At the end of the day, I know I did the right thing because when I had to
Absolutely.
face the customer about the situation, well, I got a tongue lashing for it. At
Yeah,
the end of the day, they said you did the right thing. And thank you. And so I wound, and I can sleep at night knowing I did the right thing. And yeah, I'd ruffled a
absolutely.
few feathers, but I guess maybe I'd love your thoughts for that food safety quality professional that is faced with that tough decision. What are some thoughts or things you can share with them that will help guide them during a
Yeah.
difficult challenge and make the right decisions?
Well, yeah, I will tell you, when I was in Europe, Kraft bought Cadbury in 2010, very large British chocolate company,
Mhm.
very well known, and we actually had in the middle of the acquisition phase, we hadn't even bought the company yet. We had a quality issue or food safety issue we were dealing with in a plant that supplied both our European and Eastern European Middle East plants, and the best thing I heard from our CEO at the time, Irene Rosenfeld, was we're going to do what's right. And if it means pulling product off the market, that's what we'll do. Even though the British press would have been all over them. Now, thankfully, it didn't come to that. We did all the investigation, all the proper root cause analysis, et cetera. But, there was never any doubt that we were going to do the right thing. I can't say every company thinks that way. And I'm not going to name names or even experiences I've had, but it is not always so black and white that we think it's like, well, it's an easy decision. You do a recall, you do a withdrawal, you destroy product. Businesses are in money. They're in business to make money. They're not a charity, and so you have those financial pressures. What I would say is you have to stand your ground. It's not easy, and sometimes if it finally gets to the point where there's just no support for that, then that's when you might want to think, is this the right organization for me if it doesn't align with my values, my personal values. But I thankfully haven't had to deal with someone who put so much pressure on to me that it was like, no, you shouldn't recall, you shouldn't. I've had, I would say 90% of the time. I'm not going to say 95%. I'm not going to say it's 100%. But 95% of the time, I've not had any pushback when I've said, hey, we need to withdraw this product or we need to destroy this
Mhm.
batch. For the most part, I've had support. I'm not going to say there hasn't been a lot of questions of, well, can we rework it? Can we do this?
Right.
And I'm fine having the conversation, but if you don't provide your head of quality and food safety with that ultimate decision authority when it comes to something that's a food safety, because quality you can have the discussion on, because quality is a brand issue. It's not you're not going to harm consumers. It's you could destroy your brand if you have a serious quality
Yeah.
issue. But if something's a little off color, or maybe the texture is a little thinner than it should be, that's a discussion of, is the consumer going to notice, is the customer going to complain, et cetera. But when it's food safety, if you don't give that sort of absolute authority to your head of quality and food safety, then that means your value system probably isn't, as a food company, isn't where it needs to be. And we have examples throughout history of where that, I mean, we could talk about PCA, we could talk about some of the other ones where pretty evident that that wasn't the value system. And so, as tough as it can be for someone who's in a leadership role, you really have to stand your ground. I think the other thing is come with facts versus opinions. And why I say that is, in a crisis, it's so easy. Everyone gets one of the best. I had a great teacher, a guy by the name of Ron Maluski. He's retired from Kraft. He was the special, we called it special situations. Crisis implied that it was out of control, but he always used to say, you have to remain calm because everyone else around you is going crazy. And it's true. So, I mean, every crisis I approach with a very, you have to, let's talk facts. What are the facts? Let's not talk about opinions because opinions are easy. People are passionate. There's going to be a lot of, you know, energy around the situation. But if you bring facts, and then finally it comes down to, my if I was ever really pushed in that corner, my comment would be, so we are okay that someone gets hurt, or it's okay that someone could potentially die from this. No, thank you.
That
I would say, then that's your decision. Now, I haven't had to face that at that level, but if our job, unfortunately, sometimes, I think we aren't the bad cops. I think we're there to help the business grow, because if you have high quality, then that's what your brand stands for, whether you're an ingredient supplier or selling products to the grocery store. But yeah, I wish there was an easy answer, Deb, but you know, that's why these jobs aren't for everyone,
I
because
know.
sometimes you're faced with those sort of situations, and you have to stand your ground.
I want to thank you for that. And it is challenging. But at the same time, if you're in the right culture, they will leverage the expertise of the quality organization as a resource for good decision logic and can be a
Absolutely.
partner and guide those decisions versus being seen as a compliance and a no organization that is part of just doing business. Now,
If I can give one more
sure.
piece of advice, the other way that is you gain gain support through the organization. What I mean by that is,
Mm,
I've made it one of my goals is to partner with the head of operations, partner with the head of supply chain, so that if you build that relationship with them, you get supporters in your corner when you are faced with that, versus adversaries. The more you can bring everyone along to, like, hey, this is why we need to make this decision, it just makes the situation a lot easier. So I tell people, you have to collaborate. Like, I my team knows it, and if they were watching this, they know I say we have to collaborate with the other functions. It's actually needs to be part of our DNA, because if we're just seen as off to the side quality compliance, and we're the gatekeeper, people are going to ignore us eventually, or they're just going to be mad at us all the time.
So I'm going to take us in a new direction because this is more the curiosity side of me. Is you're not typical in terms of your pedigree, in terms of being the head of quality and food safety. And I want to make a point here or get your opinion on it's not necessarily having the deep technical knowledge or having that food engineering or food science background, which I have found usually is part of the job description. You need to have a food science background, a chemistry, a biology degree in order to get into that quality manager, head of quality. And I said, nay to that. I didn't have that. I had quality background. I
Yeah.
certainly had, ISO, and I had problem solving, but they saw value in sliding me over into that. And over time, I realized I had to surround myself with a lot of good technical food safety people. So, what do you say to those people that don't necessarily have the specific background because they may be holding themselves back? What do you say?
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I have a I have some people with PhDs in thermal processing, and a master's in food safety, or in food safety and quality. So I know that I am not a microbiologist. I didn't start on the lab bench, plating microorganisms. So I don't have that same level of deep expertise. But to your advice, I try and make sure my team has individuals like that. The role that you sit in when you start to get to, especially the top role in an organization, is I've always found that, because I've worked on very different product lines, all the way from dairy, which I sort of cut my teeth on at Kraft. I've worked on chocolate and coffee, and you know you name it, meats. I mean, I've worked across the industry, and now I'm working on fruit preps and syrups and beverages. Aseptic, we do aseptic, and so you can, if someone's willing to learn, you can teach the technology, the technical side, What you can't necessarily always teach is the leadership skills, the capabilities of how can know when to dive deep and know when to be strategic. Because I've seen some really good leaders who are really good at rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty, but you ask them to put a strategy together and it's like, okay, that's not really a strategy. That's a bunch of actions. And then the flip side, I've worked with some people who are really great, like they're visionary, their strategy. You ask them to put like, okay, can you do that data analysis for me? And they fumble through it. So having that balance and that blend is rare. And I'm not going to say I'm perfect at it, but when you get to these roles, you have to have that ability to sort of dive deep when needed. But the technical side of it, I've learned along the way because I'm not a microbiologist. But what I've taken with me, and it goes back to sort of like, what do I stand for?
Yes.
What are my leadership principles? Yeah, presence is part of it. When you're dealing with the board of directors, which I had my first opportunity for my new company to present to our board of directors, our strategy 2 weeks ago, you have to, even if you're nervous inside, you have to come across as sounding confident, because if you don't believe in it, they're not going to believe in it.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And you talked about earlier being calm in the sight of chaos or crisis. That is also what I am known for. And it's not just being calm, and to your point, also having your data, but being able to glean through all of the emotion and data that's flying around to truly see
Absolutely.
what the problem is. Because I find when you're a little quiet and you listen to all the input from others, when you can sit back and then finally come forward and say, oh, so this is what the problem is and this is the impact, you
Yeah,
kind of calm things down, you slow it down for people to say yes. And that's where we need to focus. So a calm voice in the face of
absolutely.
chaos is one of my signatures, even though I am like, oh my God, what are we going to do with this inside? But you can't let people see you sweat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's like the commercial.
I know. So, Peter, you and I could talk for on and on. We are cut from the same cloth, and I am grateful to know you as another quality and food safety professional. But I do need to bring this conversation to a close. I want to give you the floor one last time if there's any parting thoughts or how people can maybe get in touch with you.
Yeah, no, Deb, thanks for the conversation. It's always good. I mean, food safety is non-competitive. So to me, the more we can continue to share, the better the industry is going to be at the end of the day. People can get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn, Peter Begg. My picture needs replaced. It's about 15 years old now. I've been teased by a few friends. When are you going to replace your high school graduation picture? And it's not that old, but it's about 15 years old. But anyhow, I'm on LinkedIn. My email address is peter.begg@lyonsmagnus.com. If someone wants to email me, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I still collaborate with a number of colleagues of mine that I've worked with throughout my career. I've been fortunate to work with some really talented leaders. Tom Sampson, Gene Spence, these are ex-craft people that were just phenomenal. My boss at Glambia was fantastic. He was their chief operating officer. He was a Top Gun in the Navy
Mm.
before after he was in the Navy for 10 years flying F-14s. Then he went to business school, and he was just cool stories. I'll leave you with this. In the quality and food safety space, it's so important that we set the example, and that's not just for the quality leader. It's for the head of operations, the head of supply chain, the head, whoever it is, because as leaders, people see how you behave. So as we talked about, remaining calm in a crisis, but I bring that up because my boss at Glanby, he brought in a speaker, a fellow Naval Academy colleague of his who worked for the Joint Chief of Staffs. And if you remember, I think there was a John, his name was Stanley McChrystal. He worked I think he was in the Obama administration. Anyhow, he told the story how he would go to any of the bases, and when he would do his walkthroughs, he had a quote, and I love this quote, and I've used it for the last 7 years since I heard it. The standard you accept in your presence becomes the standard. And what that means is if you walk by something and it's not right and you do nothing, everyone around you thinks, well, that's the new standard because the boss didn't react to it. And so I'd encourage us as quality and food safety leaders, or even operations, supply chain leaders, If you see something, say something, because you are really setting the example and the tone for your organization, because they're looking at you. They're looking at you for that guidance, for setting the example. And so I love that quote. It's something that's resonated with me, and something I just thought I'd share with your audience, because I thought it was a great quote. And the last thing I would just say is, be yourself. Um, people that know me know I'm the same outside of work as I am in work. There's not this sort of, oh, I'm a work personality. I mean, I like to occasionally have fun and make some jokes, obviously
Mhm.
professionally, but yeah, you can't, if you're not true to yourself, you're not going to be very happy at work.
And on that note, Peter, I can resonate so much about that. We're going to keep talking after we stop this recording. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being an amazing guest. Your insights were incredible. I know my audience will enjoy it. I appreciate you dropping in on the podcast, and I do wish you
Absolutely.
and the rest of your team at Lyons Magnus much success.
All right. Thank you, Deb.